Hey there. So today I'm interviewing Taylor Kulik. She is amazing. She talks all about biological sleep, and I talk all about biological potty training from birth with EC. So it's a really good, nice parallel practice that she's doing. And she also talks a lot about reclaiming parenthood without fear. So this is a super interesting interview. We covered a lot of ground. I hope you really enjoy it. Please follow her at Taylor Kulik over on Instagram, which is where my followers introduce me to her because they're also her followers. And please comment below with what you learned from today's episode at the end of it. I hope you get so much out of this about sleep, whether you should sleep train or not, and what this has to do with EC at all. Enjoy. So a bunch of my followers just begged me to reach out to you. They were like, you have got to talk to Taylor. She is who I follow for sleep for my baby. And she's amazing. She's a lot like you in a lot of ways, etc. So thank you so much, Taylor, for being on the show with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
So you have two kids, and
Yes.
what are their ages?
My daughter is 4 and my son is 18 months.
And you did early potty training with him, right?
So with my daughter, we kind of tried a little bit. I didn't really know about elimination communication, but we did start putting her on the toilet from like 6 months old. So we did like a little bit, but she was still in diapers full time, but we would just do potty learning and modeling and a lot of opportunity. She actually wasn't fully potty trained until 3 because we didn't push her. But I think we set her up for success that it happened so quickly. Like it basically happened overnight.
Wow. So it made potty training a lot easier to expose her to it from 6 months on.
Yeah. Now, I tried that with my son. We were also in the middle of a move when he was like 5, 6 months old, and it was just chaos for like 6 months. So, because we were staying with my mother-in-law, and so I really didn't get to put him on the potty a lot. And I've tried, and he's just not into it at all. Like he cries on the potty, so I've kind of backed off. So it's been a totally different experience. My son, I'm not doing any of that with right now. Like I'll give him the opportunity. Sometimes I'll go see if he wants to sit on the toilet, but he usually doesn't want to. So.
Yeah.
Or he just gets right up, and I don't want to force that. So
We have that. That's probably, I would say, the number one problem with anybody doing EC. I teach it from 0 to 18 months. And then usually after 18 months, we do a potty training experience. It's like super cut and dry. Like, this is what we're doing now, kiddo. And usually takes about an average of 7 days, right? Without pressuring or bribes or anything. But with the EC stuff, kids often will just freak out on the toilet because they actually need privacy. And it's this really weird, counterintuitive thing like, I think you need me to pick you up and to not make you do this. But sometimes they just want us to leave the room, which is hilarious. But
that's
I'll leave it
interesting.
at that. It's so interesting to think about that. But I want to know a little bit more about you. So everybody said they come to you for sleep. What exactly and how do you teach this that's different from other people?
Yeah. So I would say it is entirely different because it is a completely we're basically approaching sleep from a completely different framework than what most people are approaching sleep from, based on what they've heard from their friends or the popular sleep trainers or consultants that they follow. So the way that I approach sleep is really at the foundation, just unlearning and then re-education about how babies and children are meant to sleep. So that's the very first step, because I think most people, especially people that live in kind of the Western world, the US, Canada, a lot of places in the world, but especially the US and Canada, go into parenthood with a very flawed idea of how their babies should be sleeping. So we think, well, sleep might be rough the first few weeks, maybe the first couple of months, but then my baby's sleep should start consolidating and they should be sleeping independently in their crib. And then a lot of parents come into parenthood and they find that that's just not the reality of how their babies are sleeping. Some do, right? That's great. Some do. There are definitely babies that are not, that are quite easygoing and that can really sleep by themselves, but that is just not the norm. And so parents are really confused and lost, and they feel like, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with my baby? And I think that can be really devastating, actually, because when we are set up with these high expectations for sleep and then they're not met, we think of it as a failure for ourselves. And that is the biggest thing. And for me personally, that contributed to my postpartum anxiety and depression. And I've worked with and spoken with a ton of parents who had the same experience. It wasn't just the lack of sleep. that caused the postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. It was the feeling of failure, the feeling that there was something wrong. And so the way we approach sleep is really re-education. Let's talk about how babies are meant to sleep. They're meant to be close to us. They're not meant really to sleep on their own or for long periods of stretches. And then from there, as needed and as developmentally appropriate, we can come up with expectations that are reasonable for the child's age and developmental stage. And we can work with parents to find solutions that work for them. And also, a big part of this is why, if your baby or child truly has sleep challenges, because some do, why? Because sleep training, conventional sleep training is very rooted in behaviorism and how do we modify this behavior? How do we stop this behavior of crying? And usually that is some sort of non-responsive sleep training approach, which could look differently depending on what approach you're using. But that is often just leaving your baby alone for maybe it's a minute, maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's full on extinction and you're just leaving your baby to cry. But if your baby truly has something going on that is impacting their ability to sleep, there's a reason for that. And non-responsive sleep training approaches don't actually address that underlying reason. And so sleep is so holistic, right? Everything has the potential to impact sleep. And so what I do when I work with families is find out what is the root cause of this sleep. And that takes some experimentation and work and exploring. Can we change the environment? Is it that my child is really needing more connection from me? Are they feeling disconnected going into bed? And we need to do something to help with that. Is the separation anxiety too much? Have they not been able to move as much as they need to during the day? So there's so many things that can impact sleep. And when we're approaching sleep holistically, we have to look at all of those things. Otherwise, we're just sticking a Band-Aid on the issue and calling it fixed with conventional sleep training approaches. So that was kind of a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, this is your thing. I can tell you're super passionate about it, but you've also actually been helping parents get rid of all that guilt and all of that. Well, they lose connection with their intuition, right? Because
right.
You actually named it a couple of days ago in one of your Instagram posts, which my assistant sent me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. I'll just say that some of what you put was medicalization of parenting and how it causes moms to not trust their intuition and to feel really ill-equipped and to second guess and doubt themselves. And I want to know, like, for those of us mamas who are going against the grain and doing things like you're saying, like try and going, I don't actually think it's me. It must be the advice I've been given or something else. And I'm going to try it this other way that most people I know aren't doing it. What is the solution for those of us moms who want to do that? Given that we're basically being spoon-fed all of this stuff from our pediatricians about how we are supposed to parent, but it might not actually be working.
Yeah. And I think this is where you have to try to be open-minded. And I think this is the hardest part for people because we have been raised, from childhood, from infancy, we're told we need to trust the experts. We need to trust our doctors. We need to listen to the authorities, whoever that authority is. And I'm not saying that, our pediatricians don't have great, valuable information to share with us, but they're not always right. And specifically when we're talking about parenting, right? Doctors, just as an example, we're using pediatricians because I think I talk to a lot of parents who really feel like they're failing because of their pediatricians have told them to sleep train or their baby needs to be sleeping through the night. Right. And doctors have really been put on this pedestal, specifically pediatricians, of the authorities of how we should be raising our children, including how we should be parenting our children. And really, that is just not a role that they deserve.
It's kind of none of their business.
Yeah, it isn't their business. And, I don't blame them. I don't think that it's like doctors' fault that I think it's just a series of events have happened in I think somehow we've lost touch with our intuition and the wisdom from our mothers and grandmothers and aunts. And, we've lost that connection. And so we're seeking to find that information from somebody else. And somehow that's fallen on our pediatricians.
Maybe we've given that power away over generations.
Yeah, I definitely think we have. Definitely. And so I think the first part is just realizing that your pediatrician doesn't have all the answers when it comes to parenting and sleep and breastfeeding. Most of them are not really trained very much at all in breastfeeding. And sleep and breastfeeding, if you are breastfeeding, are so interconnected. And so to be giving sleep advice without really understanding fully breastfeeding is really quite dangerous, actually, especially for young infants. And so I think it's just being open that your pediatrician might not know everything. Your mom might not know everything. Your sister might not know everything. And it's okay to really listen to what your heart is telling you. So if you're given a piece of advice and you're not feeling good about it, and somewhere deep down in your gut, your intuition is telling you, I don't think I like this, I don't feel comfortable with this, you can trust that, and not even just trust it, but just lean into it a little bit and start exploring, why does this not feel right to me? And so I think that's the first step, is just open-mindedness and realizing that you can trust yourself. You are equipped to parent your child. You don't need, when we're talking specifically about parenting and sleep, you don't need permission from anybody to hold your baby to sleep or nurse your baby to sleep. These are biological norms. These are our babies were designed to nurse to sleep. And so what I find so problematic is that not only, like, it's one thing if a parent just doesn't want to nurse to sleep anymore, right? If a mom doesn't want to nurse to sleep, that's her prerogative. We can work on that. But what I find happening most often is that moms simply feel guilty, like you said, for nursing to sleep, or feel like they're ruining their child, or they're creating these bad habits. And so there's this fear. We're parenting a lot of times out of fear, this fear response of what will happen a year from now if I'm doing this? What will happen 5 years from now? What will happen 10 years from now? Will they still be in my bed? And we don't have to parent out of fear. We can just parent the child that's in front of us in that moment, following our heart, following our intuition, and things will resolve themselves. They usually do if we just allow nature to unfold.
They do. And our babies are designed in certain ways. And, I've potty trained all of mine from birth. It's not potty training. EC is very different.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never known anything else. So I do teach potty training also for people who find me later. But honestly, if you ever try, and most of the people listening to or watching this show will know, because they've caught a pee in the potty and they've got a small child and they're doing EC with them, that babies are designed specifically to tell us that they need to go to the bathroom. They'll pop off the breast. They won't go to sleep, or they'll wake
Mm-hmm.
up and they'll be dry, and you try to get them back to sleep, and then they're wet. And then it's this big cycle to where what you're saying is absolutely true. When you go to somebody for advice, you're not looking at the whole picture. Sleep and breastfeeding are very connected. And I would go so far as to say that pottying is also connected. So we have breastfeeding issues that are unresolved because they don't know that the baby needs to go to the bathroom and has a really strong instinct to not want to go on themselves. And even our hormones, you wake up and you need to pee in the morning, right? Everybody
Mm-hmm.
wakes up and they need to pee because of hormones. This hormone wears off, our bladder fills up, and we have to pee. So giving our children that opportunity, it helps with behavior. It helps with so many things. But we often have a lot of night waking happening because a baby needs to go to the bathroom and doesn't know how to say that they do. And we also have a lot of breastfeeding issues. So I think completely agree. And if we add one more dimension,
Yeah.
boy, can we really get a lot of confidence as a new mom and just be like, I got one of these three right. And I'm like, it is informing the other two, and I'm nailing it now. Even if it looks sloppy and it's messy, but you feel like you are not just like behind the cart, but you're kind of leading the cart now, and you're in your right
Mm-hmm.
powerful position, right?
Yeah, I love that. And that's so interesting. That's one aspect I don't know a ton. I know a little bit about elimination communication, but not a ton. And that's something I'm so interested in learning more. Maybe if you're willing, I'll have to have you come on my podcast and talk about elimination communication and how going to have, pottying has to do with sleep, because that is so interesting. And that's an area that I haven't really dived into too much.
And likewise, I've admitted this on my show so many times. I am terrible at sleep with my babies. Like, it's been my biggest challenge area. Nothing else has challenged me more than sleep. I had one baby. I was just talking to him inside. He's 4.5 now. He would not sleep from weeks 2 to 7. He just wouldn't. My first baby wouldn't sleep without being attached to me for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was super hard for me to also get over that guilt of, okay, I'm done nursing the sleep, 17 months, but I kept doing it, and it was just really hard. So there's so many things to be balanced. There's so many parts to the picture. I would love to come on your show, absolutely, and teach your people about EC, because what we do also is an exposure technique. So at the very minimum, just exactly what you did with your daughter, actually. At 6 months, some people do it right at birth, is when we offer that potty, we learn one more piece to the puzzle. And that could be something that solves sleep issues or breastfeeding issues. Um, and even eating solids, like I had Katie from Baby Led Wean Team on the show a few months ago. And I learned so much about baby led weaning. It was super exciting because I had done it, but apparently I kind of was half doing it, which is fine. I did what I did. But I'm like, if I ever have another baby, I'm totally going to try. Like, she's the expert on that. You're clearly expert on, hey, here are all the sleep options. Let's pick one that's for you. And then my department is totally potty. Like, I don't care what parents choose. You can just potty train at 2 if you want to. You can potty train at 3 if you want to. But if you want to know the options and how it can help, oh, yeah. Some babies sleep better if they're pottied in the middle of the night. Some toddlers do too. And they'll go back to sleep and like really settle, you know? I'd love to help
Hmm.
educate each
Yeah,
other's audiences on
that's
this.
so interesting.
Yeah. And so I really want, oh my gosh, I love your approach. I love how it is. Um, I wanted to see, did you find, because when you were working with your daughter at 6 months and onward, did you find that any part of that sort of potty exposure helped your baby at the time sleep habits or maybe made sleep a little more difficult? Did you notice any connection? Kind of looking back is always kind of hard, but did you notice
Hmm.
anything at the time, you think?
I don't think I did. We didn't, I'm trying to remember now. I know we kind of, we had some periods where I wasn't as good as being, sticking her on the potty routinely. But then we had some good periods where I would try to, and I didn't know all of the EC stuff. Like I didn't know to look for cues. What I did was I would stick her on the potty during diaper changes. And so it wasn't like I was following her cues.
Yeah, that's
Um,
one of the 4 easy catches. That's awesome.
So I don't recall. Honestly, 6 months was such a rough sleep time for me. That's when everything kind of like that's when we started bed sharing because we had to. And that was the time that I got into learning about biological sleep and bed sharing and all of that because of my own situation. And so
Love it.
yeah, I don't recall that it really made a difference, but I'm sure if I was doing true EC, I might have noticed a difference.
Yeah, maybe. And we always say, well, I wish I would have met you. I wish I would have met you several years ago, 10 years ago, when my first child would not sleep. I had to go on these hour-and-a-half walks in Berkeley
Mm,
with the Moby wrap on, with him on me just to get him to nap. It was exhausting. I had
yeah.
postpartum depression, didn't even know it. I had it for 2 babies and didn't know it till the second one and was like,
Hmm.
why am I so edgy? And I would walk so far, get myself this Indian wrap, walk all the way back to the house, and try not to drop it on his head and wake him up. Like it was so terrible. So I
Yeah.
think that anybody who can get help with this and whatever that looks like is going to save their sanity. But also, I hear what you're saying. Like, it's not just the lack of sleep for you and the baby that can cause postpartum depression, but it can also be you feel like you're failing. Like, I definitely felt that way. I was great at pottying my baby. We were super connected on that level. I had so much milk. It was like breastfeeding was great. But when it came to sleep, I felt like a total failure. Can you say more to that and its connection with our mental health? Because I know you do a lot with postpartum wellness as well.
Yeah. So, there are so many factors when it comes to mental health. And I think that for the most part, like the mainstream mental health world and women's health world really focuses on sleep deprivation as a contributing factor. And sleep deprivation is a contributing factor, but it's not the only factor. And we don't focus as much on all of the other holistic factors that go into play when we're talking about mental health. And one of the problems that I see often is that a mom is struggling and she goes to her doctor or she gets referred to a mental health professional, a counselor, a psychologist, whoever. And a lot of times what happens is they say, well, you need to night wean or you need to sleep train your baby because you are suffering because you're not sleeping. And that mom might not want to sleep train. A lot of them don't want to sleep train, right? Because it goes against every fiber of their being to hear their baby crying and to night wean their, 4-month-old or however old their baby is. And so what impact does that have on if a mother is struggling and she goes to see somebody who she is supposed to trust, who she believes will help her, and they say, well, you need to sleep train, you need to night wean. We're not thinking about the impact and potentially the trauma that comes with a mother being kind of encouraged to do something that she is just not comfortable doing and that goes against her intuition. And so that too is a huge contributing factor to mental health. But then also just this whole sleep training culture in general. And I will give you a personal example with my daughter. She slept pretty typically. She wasn't a great sleeper, but she wasn't a horrible sleeper until she was like 4 months old. And we even had nights, I remember, like 2 months where she was sleeping in a pack and play at the foot of my bed, and she would wake maybe once or twice. I would nurse her, she would fall right back to sleep, and I could transfer into the pack and play. So pretty typical. Then 4 months hit, 4, 5, 6 months. That period was rough for us. And that is a common period that is really rough for babies' sleep. And eventually, long story short, I had to bed share starting at 6 months because she would not sleep away from me. She would not go back in the crib. She would not sleep independently at all. I had to support her so much. At that time, I wasn't the most sleep deprived I've ever been. At the time, I was. But I had severe postpartum anxiety and depression. And that really went away when I started bed sharing and realized, hey, I can trust my intuition. So fast forward to my son, who I thought for sure nobody could be a worse sleeper than my daughter. My son was born with oral ties, and I actually had them released. My daughter's, I didn't have released because I didn't know about them at the time. I had his oral ties released. Breastfeeding was awful. He had nursing aversions. He had reflux. He had food intolerances. He was the worst sleeper. He literally would only, for the first 4 or 5 months of his life, he would only sleep on my chest. And even then he would be very restless, waking every 30 to 40 minutes. I was incredibly sleep deprived, more sleep deprived than I've ever been with my daughter. But I knew so much more. I never felt pressured to sleep train him. I never felt pressured to put him in the crib. I didn't even try to put him in the crib because he was such an awful sleeper. And it was a very hard time because I was very sleep deprived and I needed a lot of support, but I was not depressed and I was not anxious. Some mornings I was like, man, I just need a few hours of sleep, and my husband would give me that. But I could like make it through. I didn't feel like a failure. I knew that he had medical issues and he had feeding issues, and I knew that we would overcome them. But in the meantime, like we were doing all of this body work and rehab, but in the meantime, I knew that it was going to be really hard. But the best thing that I could do was to support him and be there for him through it. And just knowing that I was doing the right thing and I wasn't failing him and I was doing exactly what I should be doing in that moment by supporting him, I avoided true mental health struggles.
I totally get it. I completely do. I mean, and you know what's crazy is I think that 3 of my 5 had lip and tongue ties, and I didn't know it. My 5th one had when I posted something on Instagram, and one of my coaches that I trained said, "Oh, she's got a heart-shaped tongue. That is a sign of a lip tie or tongue tie. You need to get it checked out." Sure enough, I pulled her lip up. She had a double lip tie, like 5 out of 5, very bad, and then an inverted tongue tie. I got them resolved at 9 weeks. We did all the exercises. It was painful for me, but I also didn't feel the depression. I felt like, actually, like I've got this, and I get it, and I don't feel like a bad mom. This is totally something that is a gift that I was just shown, and now I can resolve it and move on.
Mm-hmm.
She became a good nurser. I mean, good at nursing, good at sleeping and all of that stuff. Good enough to where I wasn't, I mean, I was like, what is wrong with you? I put you down and you freak out and cry. It was that
Yeah.
much, there was that much gas in her belly. So I get that too, because the contrast between my 5th and having that awareness and my first probably had one. I couldn't think of any other reason why you'd cry every time you're put down, unless
Yeah.
you were extremely gassy. I tried food, diet changes everything. And the crazy thing is, for everybody listening, like, you don't know what you know until you know it. And there's no
Right.
way to have gone back and go, oh, I wish I would have. You couldn't have. And I think as we gain confidence as a parent, it's like, okay, what is my gut saying? And what do I think should happen? That's the first place to go for me now as a parent of 5. What do I think? And I have to confess, so I did co-sleep with all 5 of mine, but I only did it to month 4 with the last 4 of them, because the first one was so full on. It was like nursing him every 2 hours, 24/7 for 2
Mm-hmm.
years. I was pretty done by the end of that.
Yeah.
But I did do, I don't believe in cry it out at all. And I don't condone it. My book specifically says I highly encourage against that, because my sister did that and I had to participate when I babysat once. And I just took her to the couch and laid with that baby and slept with her. And that felt right to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done sort of limited crying where I would just let him just fuss for a few minutes, go back in. And then after 5 nights, they were sleeping and it was fine. So I actually figure maybe I'm not that terrible at sleep. It's just been the biggest growing edge. But I do have to confess that I did that. So I've done it both ways. And what I love about you and the way you're talking about this is that you're accepting of it doesn't matter how we choose to do it. What matters is that we reconnect with that intuition and do what feels right. And you mentioned biological sleep as sort of the basis of what you're teaching. Like, do we have the facts about how babies are created and how we're meant to work in unison and be responsive to their needs? And at what point are they to be independent and to be learning the ropes with certain things? What is biologically normal? I do the same exact thing with potty training and with hygiene for babies. Like, what are the facts of human beings and mammals, and how do we kind of adapt to that and jive with that and be as responsive as possible? And I also resonate with what you said about fear-based parenting, and I just want to share this with my audience specifically. When we listen to the messaging about potty training to wait till your child says they're ready to potty train, we are actually listening to fear-based advice. So we are being told to be afraid that if we pressure our kids or potty train them too early, or if we potty train them too early, we are pressuring them automatically and they're going to be psychologically damaged forever. And that's kind of like that has invaded our culture over the course of 2 generations. The potty training age has doubled. In the 50s, 92% were done by 18 months. Our babies are biologically exactly the same for the most part. And it's only 2 generations because the disposable diaper companies wanted us all to use diapers for longer and longer. So they did a fake study. And this pediatrician has told everybody how to parent ever since 1961 or two. So you basically have this massive drive to be afraid, parents, listen to us and give us your money. And that's basically what happens with almost every part of parenting. Formula, and you've got the crib market is like super. I mean, my
Mhm.
crib was very expensive, and there's all
Yeah.
these things that we think of baby swings and jumpers and bouncers and all these things, when really all they need is us and for us to pay attention and to be present with them. So I just want everybody that's
Mhm.
listening to realize that when we do EC or early potty training or potty training, as long as it's on our agenda, like we decided, we are not being led by fear, by, oh, I'm going to damage my child. Because if that were true, then every single baby of all of human history up to a couple hundred years ago, when cloth diapers were invented, would have been psychologically damaged. And my babies, all 5 of them, would be psychologically damaged. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. And those of you who follow me know this. This is not possible. And it's interesting to know that a lot of the sleep training stuff out there is also based on the fear. If your baby doesn't sleep exactly this way and you're not getting them to sleep through the night by 6 months, there are going to be problems. I strongly disagree. I absolutely have loved co-sleeping. I feel like it reduced the anxiety completely. I felt I could hear and breathe and be with my baby and nurse on demand and do all the things that felt right and responsive parenting. So I think we have a lot in common. You and I, like, this responsive
Mhm.
parenting is kind of at the core of this. And also what feels right to you. And the only judgment really that matters is that coming from yourself to yourself. If you judge yourself and you think you're a bad mom for whatever, tune everybody else out and just know that you were created to parent this specific baby. And all you have to do is just kind of listen and then get some advice from people who know what they're doing with certain topics, sure, but not somebody who you're just going to give all your power to. Like, don't give your power to me and don't give it to Taylor. I do want to know, on that note, so we can wrap it up, where people can find you, because I feel like you're just a treasure trove of information, but also, more importantly, encouragement. And I want you to give everybody listening your biggest tip about sleep. So where can they find you and learn more? I know you have courses and other things. And what's your biggest tip for them?
Okay, so you can find me at www.taylorkulik.com is my website, and then my Instagram account. That's where I normally am on social media. My handle is Taylor Kulik. So I'm on Instagram sharing free posts. I try to do a weekly Q&A in my stories where I answer questions, and I do webinars. I have e-courses, so you can find all of that information on my Instagram and my website. And then I also have a podcast called Let's Sleep on It, Reclaiming Parenthood, which hopefully I'll have you on
Oh, I love it.
one day soon.
Yeah.
And then my biggest sleep tip. I mean, I think the biggest one is just tune out the noise and trust yourself. And also that you don't have to fear, like you don't have to make changes right now. If you're satisfied with what you're doing for your baby, you don't have, like we were talking about, you don't have to make changes right now out of anxiety or fear of what will happen in the future. Parent the child that's in front of you, support the baby in front of you with sleep in what they need right now, because that's going to change weeks from now, months from now, definitely years from now. Like it won't be this way forever. So just try not to think about what's going to happen 2 years from now and just parent the child in front of you.
I love that. You guys listening, can we please apply that to EC as well? Because EC changes every single day or week. You're just like, oh, I totally mastered it. I got it. We were doing great. And then all of a sudden everything changed because they got a tooth or they started crawling or they started rolling or I got a cold or whatever. And it's like, no, you have to be mega present. And that is literally all that's required of us, right? Be present and be responsive and do what feels right in the moment. I love that you're talking about don't be focused on the future and definitely not beat yourself up over the past. Because again, we can only know what we know when we know it, and then we can choose based on that. Now, I have a question also. Are you going to have another baby?
I don't know. We love the idea of having more, but my children are very high needs and very touchy contact breastfeeding forever babies. And so I think that if we do, we'll have to wait a little bit longer in between the next two. So we'll reassess maybe in a year when my baby's like 2.5.
Well, if that time, meanwhile, I'll be on your podcast so people can be like,
yes,
what is this? And if you do have another one, I would love to be your personal coach on EC from birth.
Yeah.
Because it is like mind blowing. And I can't wait if you do that to learn and also just hear from your clients how knowing about sleep and knowing about breastfeeding and knowing about natural infant hygiene, which is EC, can all marry together to be like a really fulfilling new mom, new dad experience. I have a feeling that's the key. Like that's the trinity right there, you know?
Yeah, that sounds great. I would love to learn more about that. I really had high hopes to learn more for my son, but my newborn days from both of my kids have been very, very difficult. And it was too overwhelming for me to think about it. So
I know.
Maybe the next one.
My goal is totally to take one thing off of new parents' plates, and that's changing out blowout diapers and poopy diapers. And it's kind of, a lot of people don't try it. And then when they get on their third or fourth baby, they're like, okay, I'm ready to try this because this baby's not totally taking everything from me and I have an easy baby for once, and they'll try it then or whatever.
Yeah.
But I love that you followed your intuition, and at 6 months you started putting her on the potty, and then you had like a 1-day potty training experience that was super smooth. That's what I want to hear, because that removes the fear from everything. And I really want to encourage you, next time you put your boy on the potty, put him on a toilet seat reducer on the big toilet and then leave the room. Okay. I forgot my hairbrush, and go get something and then listen around the corner. Now, sometimes I do line the toilet with like, pillows or blankets or something the first time, because sometimes they'll like, I want to dive off. But 10 times out of 10, you'll go around the corner after you leave the room and you'll listen and they'll be like peeing in the toilet.
Interesting. So I've been doing like the little potty that sits on the floor. So is that a no-no? Is it better to do the actual potty?
It's just like what you say about sleep. If it's not working for you,
then
it's probably not the right tool for that time. But in the future, totally could be the right tool. How old is he again?
He's almost 18 months. He'll be 18 months.
Almost 18 months. Awesome. And I have a really short mini potty. I would be happy to send you. I don't see one near here. Oh, it's way over there. That also makes it easier because they can really get on it and get low. But if you're using the mini potty, go in the bathroom together, get his bottoms completely off, and then say, put your pee in that potty. And we don't ask. We just say to do it because it's a natural process. So they want as low pressure as possible. So we don't want to ask, and it puts them on the spot. Put your pee in that potty. And then you turn your back and like start picking your teeth in the mirror, like totally divert your attention. But you have the bathroom door closed. So you guys are just in there. And just hang out and like really busy yourself with something else, which gives him privacy. Yeah. Try that. But the other thing you can try is sticking them on the big toilet. And we don't watch movies here. We don't do any screen time at all. Like once a week we do like Little House on the Prairie. I'm that kind of mom. But,
I am too.
Yeah. I'm like, can I protect you from screens?
Yeah.
It's like screens and obesity are the two things I'm protecting you.
Yeah.
So I want to get like a silly toilet seat reducer that has like Elmo on it or something, even though they don't know what it is. All right, let's go pee on Elmo and set them on it. And then, oh, I forgot something. And I genuinely forget something in the other room and go get it. And that usually is enough privacy. And every one of my babies requires a certain number of feet for me to be away from them, for them to feel that privacy. Twyla, my youngest, it was 2 feet. And she wouldn't try to dive off. She just wanted me right there, 2 feet away. I feel like there's a parallel with sleep too. Like, how close do they want you to be and at what stage of their life?
Yeah.
But it's fun to experiment, and all you're going to learn is something new. That's all there
Yeah.
is to it. And if you're relaxed, he'll be relaxed about it. And it's just a learning process. It's super fun. If you want to, you can also do a potty training experience at this age with my other book, and I'd be happy to give it to you. It's totally non-pressure. We don't pressure children. We just say, all right, this is what we're doing, like grandma did. And kids respond in the potty training world. I don't know how sleep is. Kids respond by going, okay, this is what we're doing now. Sometimes it's that simple. With Montessori, 12 to 18 months is the absorbent period of potty learning. So once they get that mastered, which is supposed to happen during that phase developmentally, then their brain and their body is freed up for other learning and their behavior becomes normalized. It's truly a gift. So and again, I'm not pressuring you, but that option is out there and it's super effective. And I have all the tools and I'd be happy to make
Yeah. That'd be great. I'm open. I'm open to learning. Maybe this is the time. I haven't had the time and now I have the time to learn and hopefully not go to age 3 changing diapers again. So
you would probably be a couple more weeks in diapers, maybe a week. It just depends on when you do the thing. And once we do the thing, we don't ever go back to diapers. It's almost like if you couldn't buy diapers, like last summer, we couldn't buy diapers. What would you do?
yeah.
Think about that. What would I do? Well, I would help my child learn how to use the toilet, and there really wouldn't be another option. And we would work together. And that's the way I come across it. So
I love that.
you let me know, DM me, and I will send you whatever you need. And you guys, it's Taylor Kulik, right?
Yes.
Kulik. So
Yes.
TaylorKulik. And that you should definitely follow her on Instagram and everywhere else and listen to her podcast if you're having issues with sleep. Taylor, thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you for having me. It was great. It was great talking to you.
I really enjoyed it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.